You are listening to a panel conversation recorded live on Tuesday, the 28th of October, 2025, following the performance of Punch at the Apollo Theatre, Shaftesbury Avenue. The conversation is part of the After the Punch series, curated by the Forgiveness Project. The speakers are Roxanne Foster, Jimmy McGovern, Andrew Morris, and Ronke Phillips, with thanks to the Longford Trust for co-hosting this talk.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for staying with us. We know it's a late night, so we're going to dive straight in. And what we're going to concentrate on is, this is the fifth post-show discussion, by the way, and we want to look at whether, when you leave prison, whether your sentence ends with the moment that you leave jail. Now, I should say that these discussions are curated by the Forgiveness Project, which you've already heard, and hosted in partnership with the Longford Trust. And just to remind you, in case you can't see the picture behind me, which I know you can, I'm Ronke Phillips, and I actually have a personal connection to the Longford Trust, as it was started by my late husband in memory of his father, who was the penal reformer, Lord Longford. And let me introduce you to this panel. I'll start right at the very end there. Roxanne Foster, who was a Longford scholar. And I should tell you, the Longford Trust pays for people's education, pays for them to carry on with their education, either inside prison or when they've left prison. So Roxanne is a Longford scholar, Roxanne Foster, Longford scholar. Jimmy McGovern, do you need any introduction? Jimmy, probably not, screenwriter. And next to me here is Andrew Morris, who's also a Longford scholar. So before we start, please give them a round of applause for staying and being with us. So I'll just remind you about the theme again, beyond the sentence. Does a prison sentence really end when you leave prison? But before we get on to that, I just think behind me and in front of me, people were snivelling and crying. I mean, it's a really powerful and emotional play. And I just quickly wanted to get an overview of the impact. You haven't seen it before. What was the impact it had on you?
I felt it was really relevant to the state of the world, or well, the state of the UK today, and quite a lot of the points in the story resonated with my own story.
We'll hear a bit more about that in a moment. Jimmy, what about you?
I thought it was wonderful, but I loved the way it was so controlled and understated. I found that really, really impressive. It's more moving because of the control and the understatement, you know.
And Andrew?
I've got to confess, I've seen this 4 times, and every time it makes me snivel and cry at the end. And the only 2 other things that do that is when I get my council tax bill and when the money leaves my account.
So, I mean, in Jacob's case, he's worked at the Longford Trust, became an award-winning radio broadcaster, he's presented TV documentaries. We saw how his life had turned out. The restorative justice and the probation service seemed to have worked for him. But we've been talking earlier, and you think that's more an exception rather than a rule?
Absolutely. I feel that Wendy, who was his probation officer, I feel that anybody who goes to prison, the trajectory of their life is heavily dependent on their probation officer, and the work and the willingness to work with the person who's, come out of prison.
Can I ask you to tell everyone about your story, if you don't mind?
No, I absolutely don't mind. Absolutely not. Let's have a chat, guys. I've been waiting for this. I'm Roxanne Foster. I am the employability manager at the Longford Trust. When I left prison in 2020. I went to prison for 5 years. And the thing that helped me turn my life around was something that my family have been very heavy on. I don't know about you guys, but it's very important to have an education in my family. So when I went to prison, I was at uni. I was studying aerospace engineering. And the reason I went to prison was for guns. So guns and planes don't mix, obviously, so I couldn't go back and study that. So I'm currently studying criminology at the moment, criminology and psychology. And I have a lot of my life turning around the way that it did has happened because my probation officer put that time and energy to get to know me as a person, didn't just see me as this young black single mum who's gone to prison for guns. She literally got to know me. And we worked the system together, and that was something that with my friends that I made whilst being in prison, they didn't have that situation. So a lot of them have been recalled. A lot of them didn't have the support that I had. And now I'm a star, so do you know what I mean?
And education, but having the person that can put you on the right path is absolutely key, isn't it? And we saw that in the play.
Yes, yeah. Where do I start? I mean, so I did 12 and a half years on an indeterminate sentence, so I had no idea when I'd be released. But I then got a Longford scholarship and went on to study law. I'm in my last year. Of course I studied law. And the Longford Trust has just been really instrumental in my whole journey. But one of the things, I mean, it goes through the play, doesn't it, is that we've learned that people who go to prison successfully will come out if they have three things in place: good relationships, accommodation, and employment, education, or training. And so, you know, my path has been quite, it hasn't been seamless at all by any stretch of the imagination, but, you know, there has been some really good help there.
I want to come back and ask you about the detail of getting connected with work and with accommodation in a moment. But I just thought, Jimmy, if I could bring you in here, because these are the stories that you draw on for your dramas. But, and when you've talked, do you think rehabilitation is working?
There's no rehabilitation goes on in British prisons. You know, it's a false question. There is none. They are deplorable. They really are deplorable. And recently I've been researching young offenders institutions, as you've just seen. You know, those young men are banged up 23 hours a day, and they explain it away by the rules of keeper parts. They're called keeper parts. It's all based on postcodes. If you come from a certain postcode, you're not allowed in a young offenders institution to mix with other people from a different postcode. You know, so they have keeper part groups, and one of these keeper part groups consists of two names. And when those two boys are out, the rest of the place is banged up. And that's the way it goes on. And it's an absolute disgrace. Meanwhile, the officers sit down on their fat backsides and do nothing. There is no rehabilitation going on. And I blame the officers. Yeah.
I'm going to move it on just simply because I want to keep on the kind of topic that we're here to talk about, and that's beyond the sentence. Does a prison sentence end or really end when you leave prison? And I mean, one of the key things when you leave prison to get you on the right track is accommodation. I'm going to talk to you about employment because I know that, but let me just talk to Andrew about how did that work out for you when you left prison?
Spoiler alert, the sentence doesn't end. So for me, it's quite subjective because I was an indeterminate sentence prisoner, and I managed to kind of come out and campaign about getting my license terminated, and that happened last year. So thank you. Thank you. So no more license, but just in terms of accommodation, I was quite fortunate in some ways, and we had a little bit of this discussion because a million years ago I did some military service, and as a consequence of that I got some help from military charities who helped me with deposits and rent and all that kind of stuff. But had that not been in place for me, I'm not sure what would have happened. When I came out of prison, I came out literally just before Roxanne. I came out in 2019. 3 months later we were in lockdown. I was in an approved premises, and then when I moved on from that approved premises, I moved into temporary accommodation, which was really difficult. But I had lots of people that cared about me. I mean, two of them are in the audience today. The wonderful national treasure that is Donna Kroll, and of course, Her Majesty, my partner, Trish, in the audience there. And people who rang me and just kind of cared about me and loved me and said to me, you know, are you all right? And one of the things that I said to them is that if I've done anything in prison, I learned how to cope with lockdown.
That's a really good point. I mean, you came out literally when we were in lockdown.
Yeah.
And you were telling me some really shocking things, that you managed to get accommodation, but if you were male...
Yeah, so as it was for, at that time, is, thank God, the only time I thank God that I'm a woman, was when I came out of custody, because that then meant that they had to put me into a hotel, sorry. But the rules of that hotel was that I wasn't allowed to have anybody stay over, which included my child. So I was in there for 3 months and I wasn't able to spend the night with my daughter, which was a really difficult thing. And like I said, my probation officer, they report back to the probation officer and she would just ignore those emails that would say, you know, if I've had people round or whatever, because that's my baby, do you know what I mean? That's my kid. So, yeah, it's... Exactly. Yeah. And the men were given tents to leave prison. I couldn't live in a tent. It would need to have Wi-Fi.
Yeah. But that, I mean, people may not have grasped what you said. Men who were released from prison during lockdown were given a tent and told to just go and find somewhere to sleep.
Yeah.
I think it's still going on, isn't it?
Yeah, it's still going on.
Still going on.
Well, I'm shocked by that, and I'm sure people in the audience are as well. And the other thing that is a real sort of block to moving on with your life is employment. You need to get a job to move on. I know you're now the employability
manager. Yeah. So I... Oh, go on.
No, I was going to say, tell me
Sorry.
about your own experience before you tell me about what you're doing with the Longford Trust. How did it work out for you?
That's what I thought you was going to say. So when I left custody, I had an interview. I set up my interview before I had left, and I had my interview the following day. And I worked as an employability manager from the absolute big time since I've left prison. And I worked for an organisation called A Fairer Chance, and my manager at the time, she was a godsend, and she's taught me everything that I've known. And then obviously, because I've got a little bit of sense, I was able to pick up some stuff. But the main thing that I really want everybody in here to understand is that employment is the thing that turns your life around when you go to prison. And I don't know what any of you guys do in here, but you need to give people chances. Like, my role at the Longford Trust is literally to hold employers' hands, hold them, support them into getting these... We're actually just normal, cool people that made a mistake. Like, you've all made mistakes. And if it just... I just want everybody to understand that it's employment that turns it around, and having... And you make your family from working. Because Peter, he's like my dad. Where is he? He's in here somewhere. My manager. I love that guy with his roof terraces. Anyway, you know, you make your family. They become your family, and that's what I hope is the message that is left here. Give people who've been to prison a chance. Give them employment. Give them housing. Like, we haven't got 10 heads. We just made a mistake. Yeah, that's it.
And everyone who's here is here because they do care, but it is changing the attitudes, Jimmy, isn't it, of the people that do see people who've got a criminal record as some sort of monsters that they can't have near their families or near their workmates.
Yeah, I know. But I was a crazy young man once, and I could easily have ended up in prison. And the only thing that kept me out was sheer luck. I was lucky, you know.
And Andrew, do you want to add to that? I mean, how hard is it for you to get...
I mean, just thinking about the play, it costs us 120,000 plus, I think, for each young offender that is in custody at the moment. For my entire time in custody, it cost £53,000 a year to keep me in custody, and I was in for 12 and a half years, so you can do the math if you choose to. But the reason I say that is because while I was in custody, one of the things I did is I wrote to the then Prime Minister, David Cameron, and I said, if you release me and pay me 40 grand a year, you've still saved yourself 13 grand. And surprise, surprise, I got no reply. But what I did manage to do, and I am grateful for it, is I left prison and I went to work at the Ministry of Justice. Of course I did. And I was part of the Prison and Probation Ombudsman, where we investigated and assessed complaints from people in prisons. I left that job after about 4 years. I do something else completely different now. But one of the things that I'm most proud of, apart from my association with the Longford Trust, not because I can see Peter up there, but is I'm on the board of the Howard League for Penal Reform, probably the only person with lived experience, I think, to sit on their board ever, which, you know, is a proud moment for me. No, thank you. You know, as Roxanne was saying, you know, people who make mistakes, you know, we're willing to work twice as hard to just maintain this stuff. So when I came out and I did that job, working from a hostel initially, you know, I really put my heart and soul into it. It wasn't lots of money, but it was gainful employment, and I really valued that.
And maybe that's what we need to do, start listening to the people who have the experience a bit more. Maybe they have the solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
I'm going to come to the audience in a moment for questions, but I just wanted to ask Jimmy about the power of storytelling. I mean, we've just seen that play, which is incredibly powerful and moving and hopeful. I don't know, infuse people here to do something to change their lives and the people around them. I mean, how much do you think it does influence people's understanding?
It can do. From my own experience on Time One, we had Sean Bean and Stephen Graham, and we chose his offence wisely. You know, Sean Bean was put in prison because he got drunk one night and drove his car and killed a cyclist. And the vast majority of the country can understand that, you know. So we were halfway there in a way, you know. Whereas I've done a film about a child abuser, which is only on a few weeks ago, asking you to empathise with a child abuser. And I think a lot of the audience empathised, you know. So you can challenge the audience, but you need, I mean, ideally, you'd always have Sean Bean and Stephen Graham. Because, you know, you're halfway there, aren't you? You know.
Well, I mean, storytelling is a really powerful thing. I must, I'm keeping an eye on the time and realise that I've gone over for asking questions. So we've got, could you put your hands up? I can see 3 or 4 of you. And we do have microphones in the audience somewhere, do we? Until we get to them, I wonder, I can't see because it's so... OK, can I take you, sir, first, because your hand went up first?
Hi. I was with Andrew earlier today, so true confessions. A lifer I spoke to said that it was never fear of going back to prison that enabled him to stay out of prison. That if he tried to motivate himself by the fear of prison, he would have been back in prison pretty quickly. And his view was that he was having to live with the trauma of having endured prison, and that was actually one of the things that would have driven him back to prison. I just wonder whether that resonates with any of the panel. Thank you.
Yeah, I was terrified of going back, if I'm honest with you. I mean, I don't know what else to say to that. You know, my mum was very concerned about me because I would stay at her house and I would stay behind the door and wait for her to open it. You know, we just had a very strange kind of relationship. I was terrified of going back to prison. During the lockdown, that was a really scary time, actually. I don't know about anybody else, but working at the PPO, I felt nervous that if I got anything wrong, they'd recall me. I felt like, you know, lockdown was uncharted territory, and that if I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, potentially that would lead to recall. I never wanted to go back. But the really bizarre, because I'm juxtapose that now, is that a lot of the work that I do at the moment takes me back into prisons, which is just really strange. But yeah.
And Roxanne, was there a fear there for you?
Absolutely. I actually experienced going back to prison because I was recalled for a short time. And the thing that more than anything terrifies me is the account from my family of my daughter's reaction. My daughter apparently gutturally screamed, no, like, no, not my mummy, no, not again. And that, I wasn't there, but I know my daughter, and the thought of that and her doing that, it was enough for me to be the most straight-laced babe you've ever seen in your life.
OK, thank you. And we had another question. Yes, I can see you.
Hello. Can I ask Andrew or Roxanne whether they've had an experience similar to Jacob in terms of reconciliation with the other person affected?
So my crime was possession of firearms. So there wasn't actually a victim, so to speak. But whilst I was in prison, and hearing from other people that had been around those type of situations, and you're around a lot of different people who've had different types of lives, and also I saw what a gunshot wound looks like on somebody, like once it's healed, and that made me feel quite sick. Although it wasn't mine. I weren't shooting it. I've seen what the impact of that is, and it's horrific.
There are two answers for that for me. So I'm a 12-stepper. I'm 19 years without a drink or a drug. Oh, wow. Anyone would think I was looking for the claps, but yeah, you can keep them coming. So I'm 19 years clean and sober, and one of the things that you do in recovery is an amends list, and there were 38 people on my list. I've made amends to, I think, 30 of them. 5 of them have passed. But the other answer to this question is that the people who are victims of the index offence, I'm not in contact with, so unfortunately I haven't been able to make amends there.
I think 30 is a pretty good going. Any more questions? Oh, there's one up there, right at the back. And 2 at the back, sorry. 3 at the back, okay, it's like an auction.
Hi, thank you so much for sharing your guys' story. It's incredible to hear. I wanted to know, what would you suggest, or as personal experience, or, what could be done in prisons to allow people to become, have the best facilities at hand to be the best people when they leave, and to, not have to worry about those things? And what can we do as, citizens to further that? What motives or things are available to us and to you?
I think it depends on how long the person has been in prison for. A lot of the what I experienced whilst being in prison is how quickly we moved after COVID. Is how quickly we moved to contactless, and realizing everything just became online. And even though I would say I'm quite tech savvy, that was quite an adjustment for me. I found that quite difficult. Just realizing, everything was. I went from not that life to everything is on your phone and is digital. I think in prison how it works is 12 weeks before you're being released that you'll be able to start applying for your benefits. And when I say applying, all you're doing is telling the job centre that you're being released. 12 weeks is not enough because people are being forced to live in tents. It needs to be longer. There needs to be more support for a longer period of time. And also family support should be integrated into that in some way, because a lot of people do have family that is willing to support. But often what happens, as you saw in the story, is you're released and you're going to have to sofa surf. It doesn't need to be that way.
Okay, I'm not going to let you answer that, Andrew, because time is marching on. So I'm going to take the other question, if you don't mind, and then I'll get you to answer that. Was there one more question from the corner there?
Hey, Roxanne. I just wanted to touch upon something you said about having a good probation officer. So I was released from prison earlier this year, and I had 3 probation officers in the space of 2 months. As you know, they've committed £500 million of funding to probation, but they've committed £3 billion to building 2 new mega jails up north. So my question to this panel is, politically, why is this government obsessed with punishment over rehabilitation?
Because they think it's what the public want. My understanding is because they believe it's it's about public perception. Like I said, I'm studying criminology and psychology at the moment, and I've recently read a paper on the public's perception of prison and what actually happens there. And for a lot of people, it's simply lock them up for as long as possible with the strictest conditions. But what you don't realise is you're putting people who have potentially run somebody over by accident riding a bike with people who have done some horrific things, and then there's no support, and that it's almost like an echo chamber of nonsense. You have to be a very strong person to be like, this is not my life. Prison is the most boring thing you've ever experienced in your life. I cannot stress that. And if you don't have that strength to be like, I want more for myself, I want a better for myself, you will listen to that echo chamber of, oh, the government hates us, everybody just wants to lock us up. But it starts with us. You can start having those conversations at work. It's about, oh, I wouldn't mind us having an intern or having somebody come here and do some work experience who's been to prison. That's when it starts, because the government believe it's what we all want, when really and truly it's not. It's really not.
And I am going to make this the last answer. So, Jimmy, do you want to reply to that?
Yeah, I think it's down to the fact that nobody expects to go to prison, and so they don't care about it. It's never going to affect them. And then suddenly it does.
Yeah, it's a very, very good point. And Andrew, finally.
I mean, there's so many things I could say. I mean, 6 years ago, on an IPP sentence, I was deemed to be a danger to the public, hence the indeterminate public protection aspect of the sentence. Now I advise the Justice Select Committee on Rehabilitation and Resettlement, which is quite bizarre. They pay me for that as well, which not a lot, but anyway. But the point I was going to make to that gentleman that put the question is that, lobby your MPs, get involved in third sector organisations that are trying to make a difference, Longford Trust being one of them. I don't want to sound sycophantic when I say it, but, I've benefited, just as Roxanne has, from a scholarship, and that doesn't come easy. The Forgiveness Project has done some fantastic work, again, not in a sycophantic way. Give some money to those organisations, because we are the tangible, proof. Yeah, exactly. That's the word I'm looking for. Proof. Yeah. Didn't say that around policemen very often, but proof. But yeah, we're the tangible evidence that that there's something. And I'm not just talking about us, because there are lots of other people who are doing stuff like Jacob. I know Jacob. We all know Jacob, and I've seen.
Benefit from the Longford Trust.
Exactly. Yeah. And some of the work that he's now doing and giving back to people, hopefully, who won't go back to prison, so that there are less victims, really, and fewer people going to prison in the first place. The other thing is, the play talks about, there was Victorian, was mentioned a couple of times. Everything's Victorian. In this country, all of the prisons are Victorian, and they're horrible. And if you look at films and documentaries like Inside the World's Toughest Prisons, Raphael Rowe, and you see some of those prisons, we never learn lessons, is where I'm going with that. We never seem to learn lessons, and there are lessons, I think, around the world, particularly from Scandinavian countries, that we could learn that would be really beneficial to us all.
Well, hopefully, David Lammy came to see the play last week, I understand. So maybe somebody is listening. Anyway.
Don't hold your breath, guys.
A very loud, sarcastic laugh there, I think. Look, I couldn't be more proud to be part of the Longford Trust and to hear it mentioned in such positive terms, and Peter's beaming at the back, so you can give me my fiver later, Peter. I want to say thank you to the audience for coming. Thank you to the Forgiveness Project for facilitating this. Thank you to Roxanne, to Jimmy, and to Andrew. Please do sign on to the Longford Trust at longfordtrust.org. And there's further information about the shows and recordings on Punch, the play website, and at theforgivenessproject.com. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for staying behind and being with us. Thank you.